Okay, practice number one. Let's take Nisha's cell phone plan here and set it up. All right. Tanisha now has a limit on the number of texts she can send or receive each month. Well, that's not very practical. Pretty much everybody has a limited amount of text, but hey, this is the problem we're working on. She can text no more than 300 times a month. Write a compound inequality to represent the number of texts that she can send in a month and write it in compact form and graph the inequality. So with those three things they're asking us to do, I'm gonna go right to the number line actually, because on that number line, we cannot go over 300, okay? We can go right up to 300, but we can't go over it. So in our inequality then, she could send 0 texts, she could send 1 text, she could send 10 texts or 20 texts or 30 texts up to 300. So that is the compound inequality we are talking about. It's not not outside 0, because if you're outside 0, you're in negative text. That doesn't make sense, and you can't go over 300. So then what that looks like in terms of an inequality here is we can go, let's go with n for the number of texts, could be my variable. So n is going to be greater than or equal to 0, and we have to be less than or equal to 300. So what that looks like in our compact form that we've been talking about is right here. 0 is less than or equal to the number of texts, and it has to be less than or equal to 300. Number 2 is what we want to do. John here owns a 50-acre apple orchard. We're talking about rainfall, and he does not want the rainfall amounts to be less than 10 or more than 50. Part A is asking me to put it on a number line, and part B is asking me to write the inequality. So too less rain, not enough rain, and we're going to be in a drought. Too much rain, and it helps destroy the crops a little bit. So the way it's phrased is to be less than 10 inches. So we want it to be less than 10, and we want it to be more than 50. Now, because they have phrased it as more than 50, 50 does not get close. It's not part of the solution. And 10 also does not get close. It is not part of the solution there. So that's gonna be the R, we'll call it, is our rainfall. All right, where we want it to be less than 10, or we want it to be greater than 50. Now what this means here is that's where we don't want it to be. All right, this is where the rainfall does not want to be about. So technically where you would want the farm to be at is in this sweet zone. From 10 to 50, that's where the perfect amount of rain would be located. All right, the other one we were doing is review number 3, part B. We're just going to evaluate this. So we're going to plug in x is 3 and go to either a calculator or do order of operations. Depending on how nasty it is, we're going to plug in 3 for x. So wherever you see an x and here, this one, yeah, I would just let our calculator kind of do this, because you're going to end up with some fractions you're going to need to do by hand. So let's kind of do this in pieces. Let's take -2/9 times 3. All right. Let's plug that into your calculator. And when you do plug that into your calculator is going to give you -2/3. And then let's plug the other part into your calculator. And what I mean by that is the 1/8 times 3 plus 3. And when you plug that into your calculator gives you this not pretty fraction. All right. And then after that, let's take -4 times that 27/8. And when we say do that, we get negative 2/3 still, minus 27 over 2. And then go to your calculator, and negative 2/3 minus 27 over 2. All right, what we get then is a fraction. Negative 14 1/6, you can write it as an improper, which is negative 85 over 6 as well. Any of those two numbers would be fine. The decimal is negative 14.16 repeating. I don't want you to round that. I'd like to give me as exact. So make sure you can punch that into your calculator and get those values then, all right? I guess while I'm talking about that, I'll go ahead and just show you as I was punching that into my calculator. So give me a second till they say do that as well. So when I was punching that into my calculator, it was negative 2/9. I put parentheses, sorry, I put fractions in parentheses, times a 3, minus 4, parentheses, it's a 1/8, so I put 1/8 in parentheses, times a 3, plus 3. Okay? Now when I hit enter, my calculator will do all that hard work for me and get me that decimal. Remember, as we've talked about before, if you hit math fraction number 1, that's going to give you that negative 85 over 6. And negative 85 over 6 is the same thing as negative 14 1/6. Okay?